Ireland's Six Nations squad has been out for, almost a week now, and I've finally had a chance to have a look at it. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Six Nations 2025 is almost upon us. I've been wanting to do this video for the last week really, but wrapping up the Champions Cup and then dealing with the URC stuff as well, and now obviously work in between too. But finally got some time to do it. We're going to have this one tonight, then we'll have a preview of the tournament itself coming tomorrow, and then Thursday we'll have at least a preview of Ireland versus England on Saturday, and if I can, I'll do previews of the other games. If not, we'll definitely do reviews of all three games as well. So what we're going to do in this one is we're going to talk about, first of all, just go down through the squad, talk about each of the players briefly, and how I see them kind of in terms of their role in the squad, and the likeliness of kind of starting or whatever, or being involved on match days, etc. And then we'll after that, then we'll just talk generally about the squad as well, kind of to summarize things up. But first things first, not a lot of surprises in the squad, but although I would have liked to have seen more surprises in the squad, I can understand why, because Simon needs to be in there. He's the caretaker, head coach. He's not going to be, ripping up the script in terms of just doing things completely differently to Andy Farrell. So, I wouldn't be at all surprised if, they've already pretty much planned, what's certainly in general terms, what should happen through this Six Nations in terms of, who's where in the pecking order, etc., and also this squad too. And then, given that it's a Lions tour year, it means that first of all, everybody is expecting a big portion of this Ireland squad to be away with the Lions, and then generally, if it's a frontline player, like let's say a James Ryan, like that happened the last time, or like a James Ryan, or like, in the backs, maybe like a Robbie Henshaw or somebody like that, that doesn't get picked to go on the Lions tour, then we've seen before that they'll be rested for the summer tour. So the summer tour is where we're probably going to see a lot of the players that we've been wanting to see in around the Ireland team getting a lot of game time at the summer tour. It's going to be tough for those guys as well, though, because they're all going to be in there together. There isn't going to be that many, I don't think, senior players around. I can imagine, like, I think the reason why certain players are in this Six Nations now, it might be because they might want them to actually go on the summer tour as well and provide that leadership, because they're players who are unlikely to be picked for the Lions, but they still can offer, something around the squad, on the field for Ireland, during the summer, and also just in terms of mentoring players, etc., and bringing them through. So, as I said, we're going to start with the squad. So let's just go down through the squad itself. So, going to start with the forwards. We've got Ryan Baird, Finlay Bealham, Tyke Byrne, Jack Boyle, Thomas Clarkson, Jack Conan, Caelan Doris, he's the captain, Tyke Furlong, Cian Healy, Ian Henderson, Rob Herring, Cormac Izuchuku, Ronan Kelleher, Gus McCarthy, Joe McCarthy, Peter O'Mahony, Andrew Porter, Keane Prendergast, James Ryan, Dan Sheehan, and Josh Van der Fleer. Then in the backs, we have Bundy Key, Caelan Blade, Jack Crowley, Kieran Frawley, Jameson Gibson Park, Mac Hansen, Robbie Henshaw, Hugo Keenan, James Lowe, Conor Murray, Calvin Nash, Jimmy O'Brien, Jamie Osborne, Sam Prendergast, Gary Ringrose, and then development players, we have Hugh Cooney, Cathal Ford, James McNabney, and Ben Murphy. So, as I said, no major surprises really in there, in terms of just left field selections. There is one that, certainly at the start of the season, don't think anybody would have really been predicting. But other than that, I think it's, a lot of these players have been in a lot of Ireland squads and have a lot of Ireland caps as well. But let's have a closer look at the squad. So we start with the forwards, and first up we have Ryan Baird. So Baird typically plays 6. He can play second row as well, and generally for Ireland you're going to see him on the bench. And the reason for that is because if he's on the bench, it means you can start probably Tadhg Byrne at 6, Caelan Doris at 8, and then Byrne, when Baird comes on, you can either make a straight swap, or more likely is Byrne will move into the second row, and then Baird will slot in there at 6. So that's what I'm expecting his role to be. I think, if we look at him over the last couple of seasons, like last year, I felt like he was, trying to get better at the kind of bread and butter stuff of, a back row forward, getting involved with more rucks, doing a bit more dirty work, a bit less flash play. And we didn't see him making as many breaks and stuff. I think this year it feels like, looking at his performance for Leinster, that he's gotten more comfortable at that, and now we're seeing more of the stuff that kind of he made his name for, the galloping giraffe, making breaks down the middle and stuff like that. Like, I think he's starting to carry better, especially into contact, than he was when he came onto the scene first as well. Because I think when he initially came on, he was a very, especially for like a back row / second row, very evasive runner, avoiding contact. Now he seems to be able to ride contact a little bit more, but still looking for that space. And I think that's a good sign, especially. And also then when you think about it, like it makes a lot of sense then, a player like that, to bring them on towards the end of the game when there might be a bit more space about as well for something like that to exploit. One thing I would say about him though is, sometimes when he makes his breaks, he runs a little bit away from his support and can get isolated as well for penalties. But I think, there's a dual responsibility there. Obviously, the player carrying the ball needs to look where his support is, but also the other players need to, basically bust themselves to make sure that they do get there in support of the players. Because someone like Ryan Baird, if he makes a break, if he has somebody on his shoulder, it's a try. If not, we might get a recycle and maybe score a try, or at least get field position. Or if he gets isolated, it could just be a penalty the other way. But I see Ryan Baird as basically, a utility forward really on the bench there, kind of a Swiss Army knife type thing for the second row and 6, as well. So, and it's going to give Easterby, options in terms of who he's going to start, and also, the makeup of his bench as well. He might just say that, okay, Baird is going to cover second row, so therefore can have an extra back rower on the bench as well with that. Next then we have Finlay Bealham. So last year I thought he was fantastic for Ireland, with Furlong out for a lot of the games. And, he really did fill in there really well. I think this year his form has dipped a little bit compared to last year, and we've seen him struggle a little bit more, in the set piece too, especially at scrum time. But Finlay, I think has been a really good servant for Ireland. He's the backup, or he had been the backup for Furlong for a good amount of time, and he never really lets the side down. He's obviously not as flash as Furlong in open play, but there isn't a prop in the world that's as flash as Tadhg Furlong in open play. So, he can't be held to those standards, I think. But, he, as long as he's kind of hitting his rucks, making his tackles, and basically, not kind of just walking around the field, and generally he doesn't, well, for a prop at least, right? But as long as he's doing all his basics right, I think we can't ask too much more from him. From the point of view of like Ireland, generally in the last certainly few years, we've looked to have a solid scrum rather than a destructive scrum. So, he I think he's a good part of that, just getting that stability for us. So I expect, with Furlong out for at least the first game, I'm imagining they're probably targeting like game 3 for Furlong to come back, right? Give him the first 2 rounds off, and there'll be obviously talk about, he might be back for round 2, but then they have the Furlong week. So it's basically the Tadhg Furlong week, right? Or the furlough, not the furlong, the furlough week, but it is the Tadhg Furlong week, I guess. And then back for round 3 then, in a month's time, is probably a better kind of, thing to aim for with him. So expecting Bealham to play a lot of minutes this year in the tournament. Next then we have Tadhg Beirne, another guy I think who's going to see a lot of minutes. Last year, he was, off the boil a little bit, certainly for Ireland, especially, coming off the World Cup as well. I thought in the World Cup that, New Zealand did a really good job of kind of marking him out of the game. And then we've seen other teams do something similar against him as well, where they know he's such a breakdown threat that they just want to make sure that there's somebody in there every time he is even thinking about going near, that ball to poach. Get somebody, like, it's your job, just smash that guy as much as you can, and keep him away from there, or tie him up off the ball, or whatever you have to do, right? And teams have done that very well. And I think there's an onus on the rest of the team, I think, to provide more breakdown threats so that the opposition can't just keep doing that. They've got to worry about, maybe some of the backs poaching. Previously we've seen like Porter being a really good poacher, but for him, generally that only comes out in his game when he's going well in the scrum too. So we've got to be thinking about that too. But getting a few more people in there to be real threats will then bring more opportunities for Beirne, who's a specialist at that as well, so that he can't be kind of marked out of the game. But also another thing he's going to bring to us as well is maul defence. He's probably our best forward in terms of defending a maul. He just has that ability to work his way through the maul, get there, get onto the ball carrier, or even onto the ball, and win turnovers and stuff like that. Especially when sometimes we struggle against a maul that has a bit of momentum. Tadhg Beirne is one of the few players that can actually get in there and do that for us. And also on maul attack, I think having him in there as well just gives us a little bit more in terms of not just bulk or physicality, but just in terms of like positioning and stuff like that, and finding where the kind of the weakness is in the opposition's maul defense as well, so that we can kind of roll them all to one side or the other and break off and stuff like that. I think he's really good at that, and we're definitely going to need that through the tournament. Next then, we have Jack Boyle. So Jack Boyle is the one that was talking about that. I don't think, he's the only uncapped player in the main squad. And I don't think anybody was thinking at the start of the season, well, it's obviously going to be like Jack Boyle as the third loose head for the Six Nations. It wasn't in anybody's mind. Like, he's made 5 starts for Leinster, or he's made, 5 appearances for Leinster this year at loose head. And it's kind of similar to, I think, Sam Prendergast last year, where Sam Prendergast, not really, in the Leinster team, as it were, but he's getting picked for Ireland squads. And it's the same now, I think, for Jack Boyle. They've seen him as a player that they feel has something special that could be there for the future. They want to get him in now. They want him to have a Six Nations, whether that's just a Six Nations where he only sees a few minutes or whatever. It's just being in and around the environment of a proper competitive championship, and obviously, well, as far as I can see, the plan is that Healy is going to step back in the not, too distant future, and Boyle's going to be in there, and then they probably bring one of the other, loose heads from another province in there as well. From my point of view, I didn't think we were going to have three, Leinster loose heads, in the squad for the Six Nations at all. But I guess it's up to the props who are there at the other provinces to kind of step up, especially in the summer when they're definitely going to be getting chances to be out there in Ireland, because they're definitely there's definitely spots in Ireland's front row up for grabs coming very soon, and the players that can grab those chances during the summer, I think they're going to be the ones that are going to be potentially going to be going to the next World Cup. But Jack Boyle is the one who's getting the chance, at least through the Six Nations. I've been fairly impressed with him, decent in the set piece. And I'd rather see him getting game time instead of Cian Healy as well. I love Cian Healy to bits, and it's great that he can keep going, but he should really be at this stage, in that squad to kind of break glass in case of emergency prop for us. I don't know whether that's going to happen on the loose head side or not, but we'll see, because I'd love to see Jack Boyle, Porter starting, Boyle on the bench, would just be great to see. And then his Leinster clubmate there, Thomas Clarkson, at tight head as well. Hopefully he can see plenty of minutes. He will. I think it's going to be Beelum, starting, and Clarkson on the bench, probably for the first two rounds. Clarkson has another one who's been kind of fast tracked into the Ireland squad too, and it's good. Again, it's good to see that fresh blood coming through. I think because the Ireland squad in November, Ireland looked very kind of out of sorts. The squad was looking stale, etc. And bringing in these guys. I know Clarkson was involved in November, but bringing in more of these guys into the squad can only be good, I think, in terms of just bringing new impetus. We've seen the players now that are there, that are breaking through from Leinster, had a big impact on Leinster as well, because the last 3 seasons, the Leinster squad has looked stale as well. And you see that in terms of when they got to kind of the pointy end of the season and they weren't delivering. So it's, I think it's important for Ireland as well to get these guys, not just in the squad, but on the field as well, and see how things go from there. But I think, Clarkson is probably going to be involved, certainly the first couple of rounds. And then after that, once Furlong is back, I think Furlong is one of those players where if he's back, he's in your squad and he's probably starting, right? And then it's then between, for me, Beelum is the man in possession in terms of backing him up, but you'll have to see how himself and Clarkson have gone through the tournament up to then to see if that changes. Next time we have Jack Conan, obviously very skillful, number 8, but at times he's struggled to get into the starting lineup simply because of that Byrne at 6, Doris at 8, dynamic that Farrell favoured and probably Easterby will favour as well. But a really good option to have on the bench, kind of similar to a Bird, where there's more space, the game's a bit looser. Conan has really good carrying game and really good offloading game as well, and that could really help us in those kind of games where we're looking maybe for a score, either to kind of just solidify a win or to come back at a team as well at some stage. So again, he's another player that I think, other than when they maybe make rest some players through the tournament if they have to, he's a player who's probably going to be on the bench or in consideration to be maybe like out of the squad. I think he's going to be involved in most of the match day squads, but could be wrong about that. Next, then we have Caelan Doris, the captain, who, unless injured, will be involved in all of the squads through the tournament. And I think being the captain now has really helped him. And at Leinster as well, the captaincy there has been a good thing too, because we had at Leinster last year that whole duel thing between it was Ringrose and what's his name? James Ryan, right? Yeah, those two were like co-captains or whatever. And like a referee early on in the season told James Ryan he wasn't talking to him. He'd only talked to Ringrose. So that didn't go too well. But Doris seems to be, to the manner born for captaincy. He's a very likable guy, and, just seems to kind of lead the team very well. He's the kind of guy you could see other players in there looking up, even players who have more experience than him, would look at him with respect as well, and we've seen as well with changes in captaincy for the likes of England that your captain should be someone who, if everyone's fit, there's not even like an inkling of a doubt that guy is going to start. And Doris is definitely, one of the nailed on players in the Ireland team. So it makes absolute sense for him to be captain. And I think he's done well over his captaincy too. Like, one of the important things for him in this Six Nations is definitely going to be his carrying. And, if he's not getting over the gain line, then we're going to struggle, I think, to impose ourselves on teams, because there'll be, if you get stopped on the deadline or driven back a bit, it takes time then to set up for the next pod. And, Ireland is all about kind of, multi-phase and, just the speed of ruck, speed of ball, and working into positions. And then, once we've created that, that space, striking then. But if you're not getting that go forward, then it's very hard for the rest to follow after that. So he's going to be immensely important for Ireland. And I'm sure the likes of England, first up, are already thinking about, okay, how are we going to stop Doris getting over the gain line? Whether it's, make sure that early on we double team him a couple of times and just, either again stop him on that gain line or drive him back and then strip momentum away from Ireland. So yeah, a very important player for us. Another important player is Tyke Furlong. He's injured at the moment, and again, I don't think we're going to see him probably until round 3. Could be wrong about that, but that's my inkling on it at least. But the guy, and like last year I talked about it, I felt like, he'd had injuries and he was kind of in and out, and he never looked like he was at the level that, we expect from him. He still was a decent player, but just not at that level. Whereas this year, when he had played before his injury, it looked like he was getting back to those levels again. So hopefully when he comes back, it doesn't take him too long to kind of get up to speed again, because he could be another pivotal player for us through the tournament. Next then, Cian Healy, as I said earlier, he should be the break glass in case of emergency prop. I'm not sure whether that's going to be the case or not. I could easily see a case where it's going to be, Porter starting, Healy on the bench, and then they won't want to take Porter off for whatever reason. They could do what we've seen Leinster do, which would be to start either Healy or Boyle for like 20 minutes and then bring Porter on after, we've had a few scrums and the referee isn't thinking Andrew Porter's causing all the problems in the scrums. That's another option for him to be there, because it doesn't seem like they not that they don't trust him, but that they don't want him out for too many minutes on the field. So yeah, for me, as I said, in terms of pecking order, he's probably the second in the pecking order, but I think he should be third, just because Jack Boyle, needs the game time. And I know it's it's a competitive competition. Well, obviously any competition is competitive, but it's a competition, and we obviously want to win our games. We hopefully want to win the trophy as well. But at the same time, I think in order to do that, you have to, if you have players in your squad and you think that they're going to be, let's say by game 4 or 5, it's going to be beneficial to play Jack Boyle in the first 3 games, because then towards the end of the tournament, you're going to reap the reward of that. But we'll have to see what happens with that. And next time we have Ian Henderson, someone I think that, eventually, eventually he's not going to be in the Ireland squad anymore. But I think someone like Thomas Ahern, probably last year, they probably would have been thinking of, well, Henderson gets injured a lot, and if, we want to bring another second rower kind of into the mix, and Thomas Ahern seemed to have been the guy that was kind of the next cab off the rank. Obviously got people like Sheridan, etc., available too. But yeah, I think eventually Ian Henderson will be supplanted by someone like Ahern. Maybe we're going to see actually the two of them together, during the summer as a second row pairing, maybe for Ireland, as a kind of a passing of the torch. I don't know about that. But yeah, Henderson, he's a guy who, when he first came, on the scene for Ireland, he was similar, I think, to Ryan Baird, just in terms of the impact that he had as a new guy coming in. He really had, some dynamism about him, and, certainly not as fast as Baird by any stretch of the imagination, but just an impact, a player who come in and wasn't kind of overawed by things, and you could see that he was going to be a special player too. He's obviously towards now the end of his test career, I would say, and yeah, he's unfortunately a little bit brittle now, and it happens with some players, right? You look at him and think that guy is hard as anything, but then fall awkwardly or just something happens in the tackle and they have an injury and they're out for a bit. And unfortunately for Ian, that's happened, a lot to him, a lot, especially over recent years. We've seen him kind of in and out with Ulster as well. But yeah, kind of similar to Tadhg Beirne, he's another one that can give you that, maul defense and maul attack abilities too. So, he's certainly a good guy I think to have around the squad. I just wish we had him around the squad with, a younger prop in there who's kind of coming in. I know we have Joe McCarthy, but I'm talking about, again, somebody like an Ahern, or the way he is with Sheridan up there at Ulster. But yeah, I think Ian Henderson is going to be one of those guys that, unless there's injuries, probably not going to start. But, again, unless they make changes. But we'll be thereabouts, I think, to be on the bench. There'll be a lot of players who are kind of, 50-50, I think, for getting on the bench. Next time we have Rob Herring. I think if you look at the, especially the established, because we've got 4 hookers in the squad, right? But if you look at it, Ronan Kelleher, so the traditional 3, right, were himself, Ronan Kelleher, and Dan Sheehan, right, in the squad. And I don't think anybody would doubt the fact that he's the more technical hooker of the 3. Generally, line out throwing is better, a better scrummager as well than the other 2, but obviously doesn't give you what the other 2 around the field do, especially Dan Sheehan. But he's someone that could have a big bearing for us at hooker, simply because our lineup has been absolutely atrocious, and there's no point. Obviously it doesn't all come down to the hooker. There's many factors in it, but certainly having a technical hooker in there that's generally going to give you consistent throwing will help if the line out has gone to crap, as it has for so many times. So he could be someone that is in there to kind of steady the ship if the line out has gone a bit wonky. Because if you got like, you know, Sheehan starting on Kelleher on the bench or the other way around, you don't really have that option to kind of say, okay, well, let's try and fix it by bringing on, you know, Rob Herring. So I think that's probably going to be what his role is there, you know, and I'm almost certain, you know, well, we'll talk about Gus McCarthy when we get to him, but with Ron Keller and Dan Sheehan, right? Sheehan is only just coming back from injury. You know, he basically came back, you know, for Leinster at the weekend there, played brilliant, scored 2 tries, but I'm pretty sure through the tournament, it's going to be a rarity that we're going to have both Ronan Kelleher and Dan Sheehan injury free with not carrying any knocks. So I think Herring is probably going to see, you know, a chunk of game time, probably not as a starter or whatever, but certainly going to be in match day squads. Next time we have a player that I'm really excited to see, you know, in the Six Nations is Cormac Izuchukwu. He is, you know, really dynamic ball carrier, very strong player, and he has that similar thing to Gavin Coombs, and that's like, give him the ball close to the try line and he's able to make his way over, right? Coombs is absolute specialist at that, you know. And there was one player, he's not in the squad, but there was one player from Ireland where thinking, okay, you've got a, you know, 5 meter tap penalty to win a World Cup or a Grand Slam or wherever it is, right? The player I would pick to be the guy that's receiving the ball would be Gavin Coombs, because not guaranteed to get over, but certainly a better chance than anyone else that's worn green in the past few years. But Izuchukwu is kind of the same mold, I think, in that, and also very dynamic in the loose, and and he's decent, defensively as well, in terms of making his tackles and stuff like that. I think one area maybe to improve on is his maul defense. I've seen him, like, when mauls have got a bit of momentum against him, and he's kind of looked a little bit lost about where he should be and stuff like that. But I'm sure that for Ireland, that's going to be very detail oriented in there, that he's going to improve in that area too. But yeah, a player that I'm very excited to see in the Ireland squad, and I'm hoping that he does see decent game time. At the moment, you would probably think that it's, in terms of being on the bench, it's probably either him or Bird on the bench, but we'll have to see. Like, I'd love to see both of them on the bench, because that would be something to be able to bring on the two of those. But yeah, they'll probably swap in and out, I would imagine, at least starting off. Next time we have Ronan Kelleher. He's kind of your in-between, right? He gives you a little bit what Dan Sheehan does around the field, and he gives you a little bit what Herring does in set piece as well. But, in terms of just the specialization of either of those, not as good as either of them. But, I think as an all-around hooker, especially the way Ireland play, a better option, I think, than Herring. Especially if a lot of your game is going to be actually what the players are contributing around the field rather than in set piece. But he's a super player, and he would be our star hooker only for the fact that we have a guy called Dan Sheehan also in the squad. Another hooker we have in the squad there, though, is Gus McCarthy. So far, having a very impressive season with Leinster. He for me, probably would be fourth choice, but he's a guy, we've seen him with Leinster, you can stick him in there, and he's not overawed with stuff. He's going to go in and do a job. So, he's definitely going to see, I think, game time during this tournament, and I don't think he's going to let the side down either. He could be one of those players where, you're looking at it, you're thinking, okay, probably fourth choice, maybe depending on the injuries or preferences or stuff, maybe he's third choice. But he could be one of those players, comes into the tournament and just absolutely, tears it up and has a fantastic tournament. And suddenly he's gone from being, number 4 to number 2 or number 1 or something. Certainly has the ability to do that. Next, then, another brilliant young player, Joe McCarthy, in there. This, the last year, kind of felt like kind of second season syndrome with him, where he wasn't having the impact that he was before. This season with Leinster, just been quietly going about his business, and then then he started then having more impact on his carries and stuff like that. So we want him to carry that into his Ireland, games as well. But you would imagine if it's him and somebody else in the second row. I think he's probably our number 1, lock at the minute. Next time we have Peter O'Mahony, amazing serving for Ireland. I think a lot of people thought that the Autumn Nations series that just ended there in November, would have been kind of his last hurrah for Ireland, his kind of swan song and his farewell. But he's back in there again. Again, kind of similar to Healy, Henderson as well. You're thinking, okay, well, you had the option to maybe bring in somebody younger, even just options in the back row, maybe a Gavin Coombs even, or like if you're looking at at Munster, maybe a Kendallin or someone like that as well in there, or a Donoghue, or like there's tons of really good back rowers running around over there too. But he's the kind of guy that you look at him and he's not going to let the side down. He maybe sometimes he's playing on one leg, but he's still he's still going to run for things. He's brilliant, in terms of if we want to disrupt an opposition line-out, he's still our best option in terms of opposing jumper and nicking line-outs and all that kind of stuff. I think, and then if we do want another breakdown threat, Tyg Byrne in the second row and him at 6, then we have those dual threats at breakdown. It was a case where we want to go after the opposition ball. Certainly gives you that option. And then obviously, leadership and, just kind of, that ability, I think, as well. He's one of those players that can make the players around them perform better just because of his presence on the pitch too. So yeah, I can see why he's in there. Next time we have Andrew Porter. I think he's doing, the last few seasons haven't been terribly impressed with Andrew Porter, honestly. And I think the way he performed in those 2 seasons, if at Leinster or at Ireland, we had someone who was kind of an option in terms of, not quite there, but could be potentially the same level as Andrew Porter. I think maybe, we would have seen him on the bench a bit more. Maybe that's going to happen with Boyle over the next few years. I'm not too sure, but certainly Porter has, this season is looking a lot better than he was, certainly through the World Cup. I thought himself and Furlong in the World, build to the World Cup and in the World Cup were off the boil, and last year as well. This year, I think he's getting back to that level again. He's not having as many issues in the scrum. Now that may, part of that may be the fact that he's got, the likes of Orgy Stamen and Joe McCarthy behind him there, giving him, a bit more of a push and stuff. But, as I said, there was kind of a tactic at Leinster for a few games to basically start somebody else at loose head and then bring Porter off the bench at around about 20 minutes. So he plays the last 60 minutes instead of the first 60 minutes of the game, and it seemed to work. And now he seems to have gotten a bit more confidence back in the set piece as well. And then, the fact that is, you've got, Furlong is out, but he had Slimani there too in the front row with him, and, really did, I think, help in that regard. And, I think Gus McCarthy is a decent scrummager too. And yeah, looking a lot better this year and kind of a little bit more confident with him. There's always though that doubt, right, that oppositions know that referees have this thing about Andrew Porter, that if they can even make it look like he's doing something illegal, even if he's not. So, maybe just take a cheeky little step, take a cheeky little step just after the hit and make it look like he's driving across the scrum when he's not. It's just that the opposition front row have moved over, and then he's kind of been wheeled around and got his ass sticking out of the scrum or wherever. Things like that. You can definitely see opposition trying to do that against him. But hopefully, one of the things I said with him before is his lack of adaptability on the field has been a problem before. So hopefully that's something that they can fix. Then next we have Keane Prendergast there. He's a great kind of all around forward. I think but the problem with that is, if you're looking at someone who is, again, your Swiss Army knife, I think you've got Ryan Bird and you've got Izuchuku. He's going to find it difficult to kind of compete against those guys. So, I think for him, it's about, being a bit more of a specialist in terms of his position on the bench, that he might be there beside like a Baird or an Izuchuku instead of them. But I do expect him to see, decent game time. He's someone who, given the chance, certainly can do a job and can shine. He's just not the, how would you put it? Like he's not the fashionable choice, as it were, I think. But certainly a guy, and again, if you're talking about, we talk about Peter O'Mahony in terms of getting up in the line-out and stealing ball and disrupting. Keane Prendergast is another guy who can do that for you as well. So definitely, gives you options there. Next, James Ryan. I think James Ryan, this year he's improved his game a lot. In terms of his carrying ability. He's always been kind of the man that does the unseen work in terms of getting involved in breakdowns, etc. Hitting a lot of rucks and stuff like that. The fact that Leinster's line-out hasn't been going brilliantly means that it hasn't been good for him, because he would have been Leinster's kind of main man in the line-out in terms of receiver and getting up to disrupt as well. So hopefully in an Ireland camp he can change that. I would, starting off, I would expect that it's going to be himself and McCarthy in the second row with, as I said, Tyg Byrne at 6, and probably James Ryan maybe coming off and Byrne moving into the second row as somebody like a Bird or Izuchuku comes on later on. Next time we have Dan Sheehan. So talking about him, only just back from an injury, but scored 2 tries and looked fantastic against who's it to beat? 43-0 Ospreys, was it? I think it was. I'm trying to remember now. I should know because I did a review on it, but oh no, it was Stormers. Of course it was. No, I covered Ospreys. Ospreys won 40-0 or something against Benetton. That's where I'm getting mixed up. Yeah, against Stormers. Looked really good on there. He got his 2 tries. As usual, very dynamic around the field. And gives you that option where you can put him out on the tram lines and he can be like a winger out there because of his pace, and not just his pace as well as awareness in terms of not sometimes you put a fast forward out on the tram lines and they just get in the back's way because they don't know where they're supposed to be running, what lines to do. Sheehan doesn't have a problem with that, and he's one of those players. We saw it, Leinster did it, and I think Ireland probably do it as well. You can just throw him in. He doesn't need a game or two to kind of get back up to pace. He's just got it naturally. Next time we have Josh van der Fleer. I think van der Fleer this year again has stepped up his game. He went off the boil, I think, a little bit in the last couple of seasons. But the guy was like World Player of the Year. It's kind of, if you come down from that, you're still a brilliant player. It's just you're not quite up there as the absolute best player. But yeah, he's someone who's always been really good for Ireland in terms of just his work rate. He's worked as well in terms of being more of a try threat for Leinster and for Ireland as well. And having that in his game, he's kind of someone kind of like Doris, where you would expect him to be in the team. He'd be split, so either himself and Doris 6 and 7 or 7 and 8, depending on basically where Doris is going to play. So that's their forwards. Next, now let's move on to the backs. So in the backs we have Bundy Aki, who for me, for the last few years, there's been a lot of competition for places, in the centres. Between himself, you had Henshaw and Ringrose, and then also McCluskey coming in there too. But Bundy Aki, his performances, especially through the World Cup, and since then too, it just makes it so that the selection is Bundy Aki and somebody else. I don't think it's either or. Before it used to be Gary Ringrose and then one of Bundy Aki or Robbie Henshaw in the centres. But now I think Bundy is the nailed on player. Their performance has been absolutely brilliant, and he's another one of those guys that that you're going to get a decent game out of him. So I think he's definitely going to be starting 12 against England and probably for most of the tournament. Next time we have Caelan Blade. So really good option, I think, at 9. Really good eye for a break. Really good box kicker as well, and likes to move the ball quickly, which Ireland do too. So I think he suits the game there, and hopefully we're going to see him getting some decent game time. Next then, Jack Crowley at 10. Big debate, obviously. Is it Crowley? Is it Prendergast starting 10? For me, I think that Crowley should be the man in possession. I'm not saying that he will be. I think they might actually go for Prendergast to start instead. But I feel like Crowley just has that credit in the bank, over Prendergast a little bit. And also, if it had been, around about kind of November time, I would have gone the other way because Crowley was in poor form, as were Munster as well. But as Munster have improved, over the Christmas period and then through the Champions Cup in January as well, so has Crowley. And I think he's at a level there now that whether it's him or Prendergast starting, I'm pretty happy with either of them because, I think we can trust them to deliver. And, he's a guy that, I think we can't just kind of get all wrapped up in Sam Prendergast and completely forget about, right? I think there are two players there that with the potential to really push each other on from here on. And if it was me, I'd start him and have Prendergast on the bench, but we'll see what Simon Easterby does. Next time we have Kieran Frawley, a guy, in last year, like the summer tour down to South Africa, like obviously, landed the winning drop goal for Ireland to draw the series there. But since then, he had a bit of a torrid time during the autumn internationals. Hasn't seen a huge amount of game time either for Leinster, with Prendergast the preferred player at 10 as well, and it's kind of moved around a bit. And I think probably his position for this Six Nations will be utility back. On the bench, maybe like with 23 on his back is probably where he's going to be. And then depending on if they go for a 6-2 split, he probably won't be in the squad at all. Next time with James Gibson Park, clearly the starting 9 for Ireland. I think unless he's injured, don't think he's been as good this season as he was last season. Last season, he seem to be on fire this season. A little bit kind of slow in terms of, just getting the ball away from the ruck. And also, one criticism I would have for him, especially for Leinster, is when the opposition are targeting our ruck, and it's a clear tactic, just being a bit more vocal in terms of, telling the guys, you got to get in there, you got to protect the ball, and changing the way we're approaching rucks. There's no point in him going in there. We've seen it a few times, going in there and wrestling for the ball, and then our ball is slow or it gets turned over or wherever. He needs to be a bit more forceful, I think, with even if the tactic is to not engage in the rucks. If we're going to lose the ball, and it's not just a single occasion, if it's a tactic from the opposition, he needs to be able to, on the field, make that change in terms of, okay, let's commit an extra player just to make sure the ball is secure. Next time we have Mac Hansen. He had his little bit of controversy there with his rant about referees. My opinion on in terms of ranting about referees and stuff like that. I think he did a frustration. Hopefully he's going to learn from the whole experience, because I know he has to go and do kind of a little mini refereeing course and then give lectures on it and stuff like that. And hopefully he learns from that too. But yeah, he's probably just frustrated. I really, honestly, as a person, I really like him. I think he's a brilliant character to have around the team. It's good to have him back in there. I'm not sure. I think he will be the starting wing. I'm not sure I'd pick him as a starting wing, just because he's, I feel like Nash, last year probably had a better season for Ireland than Hansen did. And Hansen was injured for a good bit of it as well. But certainly, again, another player that if he's out on the field, he's not going to let you down. Next time we have Robbie Henshaw. We all kind of know what Robbie can give you. He's kind of at that stage, I think, in his career where, he kind of came in with a big fanfare, right? And now he's an established player, and there's competition for places and stuff like that. And he could potentially find himself, sitting out matchday squads just because, if Gary Ringrose is starting, you're probably not putting Robbie Henshaw on the bench. If it's Aki and Ringrose in midfield, Henshaw probably isn't going to be have number 23 in his back or wherever, right? So maybe his dynamic, how he handles that and himself around the squad. Generally, it seems like he does handle things like that well. And he certainly will get chances too, because it's Six Nations, players get injured, players get rotated, etc. And he's definitely going to see game time. It could even be himself and Bundy Aki there, because I think he's competing with Gary Ringrose really for a starting spot there. And whether it's 12 or 13, we know he can do a job. Next then, Hugo Keenan. I talked about before when he came back from the Olympics that he didn't seem like he was back with the pace to 15s. Then he had his injury and he came back and he looked a lot better. And I think now he has kind of gotten back, properly into 15s now, and is looking like the kind of Hugo Keenan of old that was kind of nailed on starter of 15. And I think he's kind of there again. We've seen teams target him a bit more in the air than in the past. I think England are going to do that as well. They're going to try and do it, because generally solid under high ball, but if you get guys up there and compete, you can make it awkward. And England kind of doing that tactic of get up and try and slap the ball down rather than claim it as well. And if that happens, then we need our other players to kind of give them a hand out there, dig out at the back. Then James Lowe, he came back for Leinster recently as well, and I think, if he's available, he's your left wing starter. He's got that massive boot on him, and he's a finisher. He's a proper finisher. You get him the ball near the try line, and most of the time he's going to get over and get you a score. Next time we have Conor Murray, someone who, I've talked about before, again, similar to Keane Healy or Henderson or Peter O'Mahony, where you think, okay, do we not have a younger player that could come in and maybe take his place? But honestly, I think he's there on merit, because this season, Conor Murray has been absolutely excellent. And, definitely there on merit. Over the last few seasons, he's really reinvented himself. He's sped up his game. He's always been a brilliant box kicker as well. But the fact that he's not dithering at, the base of the ruck and stuff like that, really has made him, a player who can survive, as it were, in the Ireland environment as well. So really happy to see him there. Like Craig Casey, he got injured, so he probably would have been in there potentially as well, and the two kind of swapping in and out. But Conor Murray probably going to see a lot more game time now because of that. But it's going to be between himself and Caolan Blade, really, for who's going to be on the bench. Then we have Calvin Nash. Again, I think he probably should be the starting right winger. I don't think he will be, but he's another guy, when he gets his chance, I think he's going to impress. He just has to, first of all, show patience, and also when he gets chances to take them, not have the that we've seen sometimes with guys who are kind of on the fringe, where, there's a chance out wide and the ball is spun out to him, and he's almost like thinking about scoring a try before he's even caught the ball and he's knocked it on or something like that. So just kind of calmness, I think, is something that he's got to bring when he does get his chances. Jimmy O'Brien then, really good utility back, and I think that's the way he's going to be used. Now, he's not going to be a starter, I don't think, again, unless there's injuries, but he is going to, fill a lot of holes in the squad as those injuries pile up through the tournament. Then Jamie Osborne, another kind of Swiss Army knife, player that can cover lots of positions in the back line. You can stick him there, a full back, you can put him on the wings, you can put him in centre, and he does a really good job. And again, like Lowe, he gives you that option of just a massive boot and a left-footed kicker as well. So, he's a great one to have there in the squad. And, for me, he would be the kind of utility back that I would have on the bench, just because he can cover so many positions and also give you that out with a long kick as well. Then we have Sam Prendergast, who will probably be the starting 10. Again, for me, I'd probably go with Crowley to start with at least, and maybe kind of rotate them through the tournament. But certainly, I think we saw through the Champions Cup that he's getting more comfortable at that level, and he's obviously then got to do the same at test level as well. The guy's range of passing and his ability as well just to delay the pass until the absolute last nanosecond, and because of that then create space that wasn't there, if you had to just given it normally, is brilliant. He is going to take a lot of, bumps because of that, because people are obviously going to smash him, if he's releasing the ball so late, and he is going to get isolated at times too when things don't come off from. I think in terms of kicking game, he still has a lot to learn, but hopefully he's going to progress that through the terms as well. And then finally, we have Gary Ringrose, so fantastic player, another player who doesn't mind. Obviously prefer to play at 13, but doesn't mind being moved around the back line. He's a really good defensive leader. Sometimes you look at him and you think, oh, look at how many tackles he missed. But that's because he has that license to kind of shoot out of the line. And if you're shooting out of the line, you're not going to hit every tackle. But what you are going to do is you're going to put pressure on the guy with the ball, and generally when he's shooting out, it's because that guy with the ball, has maybe an overlap outside him, and you just shot up. You haven't tackled him, but you have closed off the option to go wide and allowed maybe somebody else to drift. So that's the really good part of his defending. On the wing, we saw, he did get a little bit exploited in terms of his positioning, and that whole thing of kind of biting on, and rushing up, and then not having, somebody there to cover him. We saw that, in the Champions Cup, where he had to play on the wing for Leinster. So, defensively out there, maybe not as good as he is at 13, but again, a player who, especially when he's on form, like, he can open defenses for you as well, and a really good kind of member of the squad, and going to be a brilliant battle, I think, for, all those centre options through the tournament. Okay, so that is the main squad. Then we have the developing players. So got Hugh Cooney, Carl Ford, James McNabney, and Ben Murphy. Like, 4 players who really have, shown this season, they've all had brilliant seasons. Carl Ford, even through last season as well, certainly a standout. The others, especially Ben Murphy, kind of coming more to the fore, this season, but it's great to see them in there. They're obviously not going to see any game time or anything like that, but just being around the environment, and I'm certainly that they're all in there with an eye on them turning with Ireland during the summer as well. But that's a look at the squad. Again, in terms of just to wrap up in terms of the overall squad, in terms of developing for the next World Cup, is it where most people would like it to be in terms of the turnover of players? Probably not. In terms of being competitive in the Six Nations, it's definitely going to be a competitive squad. You worry, though, obviously, about how they went in November, like that, losing against the All Blacks, and then even though they won the other 3 games, not looking very convincing in any of them. So they, against England, if England can catch them where they haven't got up to speed, you could definitely see England beating them in the opening game, and then suddenly, you're gone from being, second favourites, because for me, France, I think, are the favourites for the tournament, being second favourites for the tournament, to maybe kind of scrambling around to finish third in the tournament after that, So it's kind of an interesting squad in that regard. And then also Simon Easterby being the head coach this time. I think the test of that is going to be when we have injuries and players have to come in to the squad. That's going to be more where we're going to see his, fingerprints on things. I think, again, I think a lot of this squad here, certainly there would have been heavy discussions with Andy Farrell about, who's coming in, etc. For the squad. So, and hence not too many, surprises really in the players that were picked. But, it's a strong squad there, but they're going to be judged on the performances through the championship, and they've got to start well, I feel, against England. And if they don't do that, then, certainly will be questions about the, about the selection in terms of, well, why didn't we do, if we were going to finish third or fourth anyway, why didn't we have more players in there, to develop them for the next World Cup, blah, 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 right? But then if we do well and maybe get another, maybe finish second to a Grand Slam winning France, or, get ourselves like a third Six Nations in a row, something like that, there probably won't be as much enthusiasm in terms of congratulating them on the selection in the squad, right? Generally, with squad selections, it only really matters, in terms of when things go badly, then questions are asked. When things are going well, people are just celebrating and partying, right? But yeah, it's certainly an interesting squad. A lot of the players, again, familiar to us, and it's about really, can they kind of shake off the cobwebs from from November. We know Ireland generally are slow starters as well. So a lot of those kind of factors are, I think, playing in to maybe a little bit England's favour. But that's something we're going to talk more about when we do the preview of that game separately. So I don't want to get too much into that. We've already gone on, for long enough for this. But as I said, we will have a preview of the tournament itself tomorrow. We're going to have a preview of Ireland-England, certainly. And we may, preview the France-Wales game and Scotland-Italy as well. If we have time, we will review all three games though, because I'm going to be able to watch all of the games live. Okay, so that's the end of that one. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments.